Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam. Welcome everyone.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandat Pranam.
Dandat Pranam Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Sorry
Hare
for
Krishna, Dandat Pranam Prabhu.
Dandat Pranam. Hare Krishna. Sorry for
Hare
changing
Krishna,
the
Prabhuji.
day
Dandat
and
Pranam.
time. I Dandat Pranam. Hare Krishna. I didn't realize until soon that I would be teaching at the same time tomorrow. They just gave me the schedule after I came here. I'm in New Vrindavan for the mantra retreat. So it's a retreat for men, which is actually very nice. I was thinking, oh well, I didn't come last few years. It's been offered now 6 years. This is the 6th year, and I came this time, and it's actually very inspiring. It's a very nice retreat. Highly recommend it. And New Vrindavan is always so wonderful. Rajesh Prabhu is here. He also recently went to New Vrindavan. Was very, very inspired, and I'm inspired as well. So it's so nice to be in New Vrindavan always. Does anyone remember which verse we're doing today? I somehow am forgetting. So if you can remind me.
Mantra 6, Prabhuji, we have to start. 6.
We're starting 6 today. Okay. Okay, so we'll begin. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanam Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanostute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so last time we did 4 and 5. What was the general theme of 4 and 5? Is now in 6, we are starting in another group of verses. 6, 7, and 8 is another group of verses. So in 4 and 5, what was the general theme?
The Lord's inconceivable potencies, Prabhuji.
Yes. 4 and 5 was about the Lord. The Lord's inconceivable potencies, how the Lord is the resolution of all contradictions. Now, in mantra 6, we move to the section on the devotee, the Mahabhagavat. What is their vision, and how does this relate to the devotee? So given this knowledge about the Supreme Lord, right? That's why the knowledge about the Supreme Lord came first. So knowing who Krishna is, given the knowledge about the Lord, what is it that we can learn? How is it that the devotee sees the world? That is being discussed in these verses, starting with mantra 6. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. He who sees everything in relation to Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So I'm going to stop my video because it says internet is unstable, which is quite the case often in New Vrindavan. And others can also turn their video off. I apologize for this, but it's just the nature of the internet here. Once again, he who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So 3 things: seeing everything in relation to the Lord, seeing all living entities as part and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and who sees that the Supreme Lord is within everything. And what is the result? That person never hates anything or any being. Because just think about it. How could you hate anything if you love the Supreme Lord and every living being is part and parcel of the Lord? If everything is related to the Lord, is part of him, and if the Lord is present within everything, the Lord decides to be present within the heart of every living being, how can a person hate a living being or anything in this world? Therefore, the devotee discriminates. The devotee understands right and wrong. The devotee accepts certain association as very valuable. Other association maybe is not as valuable. But the devotee never hates anyone or any being. If we hate anything or anyone, that shows ignorance on our part. That means that we're not actually very realized, because we're not realizing that the Lord is present in everything. Everything is part of the Lord. So how can something be fundamentally bad? It's not possible. Mantra 6 describes the vision of one who can see Krishna everywhere, the Mahabhagavad. In the Nectar of Instruction, such a devotee is described as what? Who can say? How is such a devotee described?
Uttamadhikari.
Yes.
Madhyamadhi.
Right, the Uttamadhikari platform is such, it's so wonderful that um, uh, it's so wonderful that one cannot even preach on that level, because one is so much in seeing the presence of the Lord everywhere. One thinks the Lord is everywhere. Everyone is perfect. Everyone is completely in touch with him. How can I help anyone when everyone is already where they're supposed to be? But then the Uttamadhikari can also discriminate. He sees the Lord. Everybody can see that, well, these living entities have forgotten the Lord. So he temporarily comes down to the Madhyamadhikari level, while still being situated on the Uttamadhikari level in terms of his vision. He differentiates like the Madhyamadhikari and starts to preach to them. Everything and everyone is part of the Lord, and he is within everything. Everything and everyone is part of the Lord, and he is within everything. In Mantra 6, the devotee sees everything and everyone in relation to the Supreme Lord. And we engage in practicing devotional service and receiving knowledge of the Supreme Lord under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master. We begin to recognize other living entities also as spirit souls on the same spiritual nature as ourselves and the Lord. So, and the Purport Prabhupada talks about how we must practice devotional service and receive guidance from the spiritual master. Then we can come to this level of vision, where we can ascertain the presence of the spirit soul within everyone. And we see this in advanced association, even in our movement. When we see this advanced association, we immediately notice the first thing that strikes us about these people, when you meet them who are truly advanced, is that they're very non-judgmental, very accepting, and they see everyone as in the equal light. Like everyone is they're very affectionate to everyone, because they genuinely have developed, due to their service to Srila Prabhupada, due to their devotional service for years and years, over 50 years, they've genuinely developed that vision that they see everyone as spirit soul, not artificially, but through their service, through the revelation that the spiritual master provides. Here we have right now Mahatma Prabhu, Kalakanta Prabhu. They're both Grihastas, Anuttama Prabhu. And all of three of them, you'll see that have that same quality. Very accepting, very non-judgmental, very kind. Just they don't, oh, this guy's better, this guy's worse. They see everyone. They'll meet you and you'll think, wow, they must feel like I'm the best devotee here. But then they talk to other devotees and they're interacting with them in the same way, because they genuinely have that vision. They're so nice. Bhakti Marg Swami was giving class this morning, and he mentioned how he joined in 1973, and we're in 2023, so that's 50 years, right? So 50 years they've been serving incessantly, sincerely. And in one place, actually, some devotee told me, I haven't seen the quote, Prabhupada says that if you serve for 20 years, if you're a devotee for 50 years, 20 years also he's mentioned, but 50 years, he says, then you go back home, back to Godhead. So these devotees have actually done that 50 years. Prabhupada says about 20 years, he says, if you keep in the same service place for 20 years, then I'll look at you. He says you have to at least 20 years do devotional service, because that is steadiness. So the point being that this is not an artificial vision. A devotee genuinely, through purification, has developed that eyesight, that vision. And the reason why we accept the spiritual master, one of the reasons, is because when we accept the spiritual master, then at least one person, the spiritual master, we have to treat like the Lord, as good as the Lord. But once we come to the Uttamadhikari platform, then we see all living entities on that same platform as good as the Lord. In the same way, in the same vision, we see them as good as the Lord. Because we understand that ultimately they're all pure. In the original form, the spirit soul, not just original form, the spirit soul is always Satchit Ananda. So everyone is on that same platform. But right now, they're covered. So even the Uttamadhikari devotee will serve the spiritual master, listen to the spiritual master, like his life and soul, more than everyone else, because the spiritual master is a self-realized devotee. But in terms of how they view everyone, they see everyone on that same spiritual platform. Gradually, our envy and desire to enjoy others decreases as we realize that we are all eternal, infinitesimal spiritual sparks, simply meant to give pleasure to the Lord. A devotee who has reached this highest stage of realization always tries to engage everyone in the Lord's service. They also understand their smallness. When we're in a conditioned state, we think we're very big, very important, in the center of the world. The whole world revolves around us. When we advance, we realize I'm very small, very insignificant, not in the center, on the side, meant to serve everyone else and Krishna. 3 conditions for achieving a non-envious consciousness. Prabhupada says 3 conditions. See everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. So actually the verse says this. See everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. See all entities as his parts and parcels. See him within everything. And as I was mentioning, there's 3 levels of devotees. The Kanishta Adhikari is that level of a devotee who goes to the church, temple, or mosque, considers God to be present only in the temple, doesn't know who is in which position spiritually or who is realized, can't see any difference between an advanced devotee and a neophyte devotee, and that such a devotee is also mechanical and quarrelsome. They're very interested in worshiping the deity because they think the deity is God, but they're not interested in the devotees, or they don't understand the value of the devotees. The Madhyamadhikari recognizes 4 different categories and relates with them differently. The Madhyamadhikari understands that there's the Supreme Lord, 1 category. The devotees, 2 categories. The innocent, those who need knowledge, who are in ignorance but very innocent and they're ready for spiritual knowledge. And the 4th class is the envious class, which is aware about the existence of religion, spirituality, but is actually averse to the Lord and his devotees. So such a Madhyamadhikari is someone who knows how to relate with all of these 4. He's very affectionate to the devotees. He's very compassionate to the new people, to the innocent. He serves the Supreme Lord, and he avoids the envious. 3 levels of devotees, and the 3rd level is Uttamadhikari. The Uttamadhikari sees everything in relation with Krishna, doesn't discriminate between different categories, sees all on the spiritual platform, regardless of their material situation, sees how everyone is relating with Krishna, simply tries to do good for them, regardless of how they act. He sees that they are all obeying Lord Krishna, even if unwillingly. So devotees like that, these advanced devotees, that regardless, someone's really being, I think myself, like very obnoxious, insincere, irresponsible, yet they still try to uplift that person. They still try to do good for that person. Application: imitation versus practice. So it's our duty to try to be like these advanced devotees, that even if someone is inimical to us, even if we don't like someone, even if someone is troublesome to us, in our mind, we're still always thinking, how can I be good to them? In our efforts, in our intentions, we're always thinking, how can I help them? Because we're convinced that actually they're a pure soul and they've just become like this temporarily. Just like a mother who loves her child. The child may misbehave, but still she'll love the child just as much because she knows that her child is actually good. Child has come from her womb. It has to be good. The child is actually good, and she's hoping and helping some way or the other for the child to become good. She doesn't reject the child. She doesn't hate the child. She doesn't think the child is bad because it's her own child. In the same way, the devotee thinks that this is Krishna's child. How can it be bad? It's become bad temporarily. So let me just help. Let me just keep helping. And it's true, one day they are able to break the pangs of break the iron around the heart and give these devotees liberation. Don't imitate the Uttamadhikari. You'll become a false philanthropist. To achieve universal peace and brotherhood, you have to learn from Uttamadhikari, who will teach you how to actually come to the spiritual platform. So this mood of serving of Uttamadhikari, that wherever we are, we're trying to help others. It starts with the family. We have to, in our family life, we have to think, how can I help this other person? Even though this person is not acting properly, they're improper, their behavior is not good, even though this person is annoying me or, but we're thinking, how can I help this other person advance in spiritual life, advance in there, rather than being envious of them. Okay, so that's mantra 6. Mantra 7. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhut vijanata tatra ko mohaksha ka shoka ekatvam anupada. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Supreme Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? Mantra 7 continues describing the consciousness of the Mahabhagavata, which was introduced in Mantra 6. So that's why 6 and 7 go together. It's further describing the consciousness. How is that person seeing? They're seeing other beings in quality as one, as spiritual sparks. And they have no illusion or anxiety, therefore. Mantra 7 is saying that spiritually, everyone is the same as the Lord in quality and interest. Same in quality, not same in quantity, but same in quality. In Mantra 7, the pure devotee sees all the spirit souls as having the same qualities as the Lord. So we're all qualitatively one with the Lord, we say. If we are qualitatively one, how could we be misguided? On the spiritual platform, the living entities and Supreme Lord share not only the same spiritual nature, but also the same interest. Just as a family or nation has a common interest, that Supreme Person becomes the center of enjoyment and activities for all the individual spirit souls, and the Lord enjoys himself in their association within this highest realization of spiritual activities. There is no anxiety or illusion. On the material platform, there's always a clash of interests, both individually and collectively, resulting in anxiety and lamentation. The only solution is to have a common center. The only common center for all living beings is the Supreme Person from whom everything is emanating. By placing him at the center of our activities, we enjoy an eternal life of bliss and knowledge in a loving relationship with him. So Krishna consciousness means putting Krishna in the center of our life. That's our center. That's our focus. And center means that most of the time, actively, we are engaged in serving the Lord directly. Krishna is in the center of the rasa dance. Here in the mature world, there's always a clash between different individual beings because here the proper center of enjoyment is missed. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest. And without any clash, that is the highest platform of spiritual interest. As soon as one realizes this perfect form of oneness, there can be no question of illusion, moha, or lamentation, shoka. This morning I was chanting here in the temple room in New Vrindavan, and Mahatma Prabhu was chanting in the temple. Mahatma Prabhu does a lot of retreats, seminars on japa, and he did one for here. And it's because he's a very expert, devotee and very absorbed chanter. And so I thought, well, let me get some mercy because I want to improve my chanting. Let me go and just sit next to him. So I went and sat next to him, and it was nice. And then I got up and I then stood near Tulsi and was chanting. And then he came up to me, almost responding to my request of wanting to enjoy and also improve my chanting. He came up to me and he said, chanting nice rounds is very simple. Very simple. The essence is that while you're chanting, you unplug from the material world. So while you're chanting, you're no longer a father, you're no longer a son, you're no longer a husband. You're just chanting. You're just a devotee of the Lord. You unplug from the rest of the world, and you plug into the spiritual world. At least for 2 or 3 hours during the day, you're just in the spiritual world. You're not even aware of the material world. And this was such a nice advice. He said, so much so absorbed that we should forget about time, like, oh, it's time to stop. And we should also forget about space. Where am I doing it? What happened? Where am I sitting? We should just be absorbed. So spiritual oneness means one in quality. All living entities are spiritual, one in quality with the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada gives the examples of sparks in relation to fire. So the Uttamadhikari sees oneness in the sense of everything being the energy of the Lord. There is and is not a difference, but the oneness cannot be overlooked. Srila Prabhupada makes the point that this verse is explaining the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So the reason why oneness is being talked about here is because we have the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda, that the Lord is also one with the world, yet different. The Lord is impersonal, yet also personal. And by recognizing this, by understanding this, we are able to understand the Lord's presence everywhere. See, the fact that everything is different or separate from the Lord is obvious. We see tables and chairs and then separate from the Lord, they're different. So when the Shastras talk about oneness, they're not saying, oh, everything is just one. But what they're saying is that the difference is obvious, the difference is real. Obviously, things are different. But in addition to that, not only that, there's also a sense of oneness. There's also Krishna who has become, we are part and parcel. Srila Prabhupada explains in a lecture on this verse, if one is 100% one with the Supreme Lord, then how he has come under the control of Maya? This question they cannot answer. They meaning the impersonalists. So this is the point. If we're 100% one, how can we come under the control of Maya and become different? Rather, we have freedom and we have free will. The spark separated from the fire loses its fiery quality, most in ignorance, less in passion, and in goodness it is not. It is most passion, and in goodness it is most manifest. The living entities can possess up to about 80% of the qualities of the Lord. In minute quantity, he possesses them all in full. We are meant for enjoyment and always seek it, but in the wrong way. We have wrong centers here in the material world. Here in the material world, there is always a clash between different individual beings, because here the proper center of enjoyment is missed. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord. We are all meant to join him and enjoy with one transcendental interest only, and without any clash. The Father extends himself through his children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. If the children obey the Father's will, family affairs will run smoothly with one interest and a pleasing atmosphere. So, Krishna consciousness, as I mentioned, means bringing Krishna from the side into the center. And Prabhupada explains this. He says, bringing in the center means that we revolve or change our life in such a way that we can always find time to think of Krishna. Life should be so molded, Prabhupada says, that we can always think of Krishna. The Supreme Atma or Paramatma alone maintains all the individual minute beings, but the Supreme Lord wants to derive pleasure out of their affection. And that's the end of mantra 7. So any quick question, comment? It's just this last slide. The Lord wants to derive pleasure in the association of the individual souls. And this is why preaching is so exalted, because each one of us can do what no other soul can do. We have a specific way of serving Krishna. When we're in the spiritual world, when we're perfected and liberated, we have a specific rasa that we're serving Krishna, and no one else can take that place. So Krishna is actually very unhappy due to separation from these souls. Krishna is actually very unhappy that we are away from him and suffering in this world. And if someone brings these souls back to Krishna, rather than shooing people away, but calling them in, interacting with them, making them part of the devotee family, it's such a big service. Krishna says, Nacha tasmat manisheshu. There's no one in this world who's more dear, because one has to participate in the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement. Okay, any questions, comments? Now we can turn our video on if you like, because the slides are not being shown. Any questions, comments? Yes, Rajiv Shah. Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. Nice lecture, actually. One question, I think in one of the slides you mentioned about Uttam Bhagwat, Uttam Adhikari, that we should not imitate them, but I think they always say that you should follow them. So what is the difference between imitation and following? Like how we can realize that when we are following Guru Maharaj, for instance?
Mm. Yes. So following means that we're fulfilling their instruction, right? Following means that we are in touch with the heart, in tune with what they really want us to be and become. Following the explicit instruction, but even knowing that this is what my spiritual master desires, rather than just trying to do what the spiritual master is doing. So imitation is also a way of actually appreciating someone or serving someone. You know, if they're engaged in preaching, we're also, if they're serving, but in exactly the way that they're doing, we cannot do. So imitation means trying to do everything like the spiritual master is doing, but following means to imitate, but in such a way that we are fulfilling their instructions and fulfilling their desires more so, not just we are trying to artificially be like that. Did that fully answer your question, or just one part of it?
No, I think the way I understood is like imitation is without knowing the principles or without knowing the essence, I guess. That is imitation, but following is like knowing the essence and then doing based on what that instructions are. Is that fair?
Yes, that is correct. That's 100% correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that's very nice. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. So we'll stop here at this point. I'm sorry I have to go early today, and it was a short class, and I look forward to being with all of you next week, and we'll continue then.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Dandat Pranam.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.